We wanted our children to sit next to them and soak up education through osmosis. And our children got cut to pieces. Many of our children could run rings around them educationally. Then why did they go to these white schools and got dumbed up and confused? We should have given our children strength and confidence when they went to the school. Don't tell me math is hard. We invented it. Well, hell, the pyramids is there. You can't deny they're there. There's no bonding agent. I mean, things were built without cement 6,000 years ago. They're still standing there. They had a paint that's color fast, hadn't been retouched in 3,000 years. Right now, you paint a house in 10 years, you got to paint it again. And you can observe all of this without understanding the nature of the war on our community and our community frame of mind. The European came out of a scattered community. It was no community. And he claimed the creation of Rome and Greece. I can do more in proving to you that Rome and Greece was not Europe than anybody else can prove that Egypt was not Africa. Rome and Greece was not Europe. Two Mediterranean-inspired nations, because when they rose, there was no Europe. That's hard on your imagination. What created Europe? The challenge of Rome and Greece. Fighting Rome and Greece, they got themselves together to fight it or try to destroy it. Getting themselves together to fight this challenge made them a nation. They began to have facsimile nations, and they weren't even clear on the nation concept in Europe until near the end of the 18th and the 19th century. And you actually know, here's the people who came in the world civilized. And Europe was born when the ancient world was ending at the beginning of the modern world. There was no Europe in ancient times. You don't know how to dispute him or turn back all these fakers and these woman book called Leskiewicz, not out of Africa. Look, a cat will protect its kittens. A snake will bite you if you jump near its young. And we can't protect those things that sustain us as a people as we walk the earth. We can't claim anything that we did. And one of the main reasons we are delinquent in making a claim, we do not understand the concept that someone else projected to the world called civilization. Civilization is mechanization. To organize thuggery is not to civilize a people. Now, when we look at the history of the intelligence of Europe and its war on our community, we can trace European intelligence from the discovery of a book called The Odyssey and the Iliad, written by someone named Homer, who we don't even know whether he's man or woman. To this day, they began with a lot of mythology about Africa. Complementary mythology, but strange and confusing. The African was 10 feet tall with one eye in the middle. It's a complementary but misleading mythology. It began with the Greeks. Anytime they want to get people off their backs, said, no, I'm going to call on my friends, the Ethiopians, leave me alone. Why did they turn to Africa as a symbol of strength when they were just beginning to discover intelligence? Now let's look at 8/5 BC, Egypt had already had 10,000 years walking the sun. It was tired. 100 years later, Egypt's relatives from the south would move up, Castor, Pianki, Tahaka, starting in 751 BC. These relatives from the south, from the 25th dynasty, would show the people in the country that the Greeks called Egypt how to rule a nation one more time. Don't count any dynasties after the 25th. Because all the other dynasties was mixed breed, mulatto-sized, foreignized, and confused. Ending with Cleopatra. Where was Europe learning to crawl while the Africans were walking in the sun? But the first thing when he beheld your community was to declare war on your community, your own frame of mind. I have over the years delivered a lecture called Africa 3,000 Years Under Siege, many times but not always the same way. For 2,000 years, our enemies came from Western Asia. Before the European came, the last invader from Western Asia after the Assyrians, now called Syrians, was from Iran. They were so brutal that the Africans cried out, "Oh God, if you cannot send me a liberator, send me a conqueror who will show me some mercy." This invasion from Iran set up Africa for the invasion of Alexander the Great. Now, this is 332 BC. Hear me well. Nothing in Africa had any European influence before 332 BC. If you got 10,000 years behind you before you even saw a European, then who gave you the idea that he moved from the Ice Age, came all the way into Africa, and built a great civilization and disappeared when he had not built a shoe for himself or a house with a window? Why are people so good to us before they're good to themselves? Now, if you want to do some good homework on this and want to understand the nature of a fakery called civilization, remember, civilization, like Broadway shows, have to have a rehearsal stage. Now, if Europe came and built the pyramids and all those temples, then you've got to find the ruins of a rehearsal stage in Europe, because you would rehearse on how to do it before you finalize it. Just like they take a show and put it on out of town to see if it's good enough for Broadway. If it's not good enough for Broadway, they close it out of town. Broadway's so expensive you can't even afford it unless you can draw an audience. Now, if you take African history, go to the south, and you will find experimental pyramids, 42 experimental pyramids. You will find the same social thought in the south as in the north. You will understand that the Nile River, it stretches 4,000 miles into the physical body of Africa. And the main population that peopled Egypt came from the south. from the rehearsal stage in the South. Now, after the rehearsal, they had a general idea how to build a great structured nation. Then they developed a great agriculture so they can feed a lot of people. Housing complex, a great spirituality that contained a lot of people. And so the greatness of Africa does not belong to Egypt alone. It belonged to a collection of people who came down that great cultural highway called the Nile to build Egypt. And the first thing they built was a structured families, a community nest. And when communities couldn't get along, they began to sell the difference between community and the community to make a larger community called a city. Then they consolidate the cities into something called a state. And when great territories came together, it was equivalent to an empire. All of this opened the way for the first dynasty, and the second dynasty, and the third dynasty with the great commoner Imhotep, father of medicine, father of philosophy, builder of the step pyramids, father of great architecture, a multi-genius. Now, look at this multi-genius and look at his ancestor. Look at Paul Robeson. Great singer, lawyer, all-American athlete, language. Now look at it. Now you can understand that Paul Robeson and Imhotep are relatives. Do you know anybody else that produces geniuses of this magnitude with consistency going back thousands of years? Then why must you leave these great values to be whores after the values of a valueless people? The sense of community and the sense of nation is what we have lost, in the sense of what Malcolm X was trying to teach us, especially in his message to the grassroots, that land is the basis of nation. Edmund Blyden, in the end of the 19th century, his inaugural address at Liberia College, he said, we will have to work for many years to come without the popular support we have to have. We strive to be those things most unlike ourselves. We feed grist into other people's mills. Nothing comes out except what has been put in. That then is our great sorrow. We're knocking at the door of someone else's house and we're neglecting our own house. Now where do we go from here system-wise? I maintain that there is no African solution short of a Pan-African solution. That there is no capitalist solution unless you are in charge of the capital. There is no socialist solution unless you are in charge of the social. That there is no solution that can be imposed to you. But you must work out a solution based on your values. There are certain things we may not need. But had we in the United States understood that with the rise of the civil rights movement, the Montgomery bus boycott, we could have put those best values together, rescued the predominantly black colleges, especially those teaching forms of technology, understood not only Booker T. Washington, understood that there was no fight between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. there was a difference of opinion.